Why'd they run the ball so well, Greg?
The Kittle factor is huge. I think the fact that he can block on the outside one-on-one allowed for a lot more double teams inside in the run game. Almost 65% of McCaffrey runs inside between the tackles. That was the foundation of the 49ers run game. It was just a really strong effort, what Kittle brings to the table, but he's capable of blocking first-level edge defenders one-on-one.
And is the Kittle threat as much a part of this to where, he's out there and you've got Juszczyk who can either be in the backfield or on the line of scrimmage, but the fact that Kittle's out there, does that give the defense a little bit more of a pause to where they can't totally sell out for the run?
I mean, I certainly don't know. That's a hard question to answer because you don't know what's in their mind and how the defensive coordinator is preparing to do that. But, I think, obviously, I don't even think Kittle was targeted in the game. It was an odd game because this was not Mac Jones' best game by any stretch of the imagination, but they so physically dominated up front in the run game. I mean, they physically beat up the Falcons. But they do some really cool things with motion. They use this kind of Juszczyk's return motion where he was kind of in a wing alignment. Then he would start in the backfield, then he'd return and go back. I mean, they get to runs in a very creative way. They get to base runs in very creative ways because there's not 500 runs. So it's just a matter of how you choose to get to them, who you use to make the blocks. Is there motion? Is there not? Kyle Shanahan's always been an absolute master at doing those kinds of things. But, as I said, Mac Jones, and it turned out, look, they only scored 20 points, and the final touchdown came late in the game, right after a play call that was clearly specific to that situation when they hit McCaffrey, I think, for 17 yards on 3rd and 13. But like I said, this was just not Mac Jones at his best. I didn't think he was the higher level post-snap operator that usually defines his play. I thought his eyes were not in the right place sometimes, but that happens. I mean, I think what a lot of people forget, because quite frankly, there's only 17 games. So people want their team to be great for 17 games. Every guy to be great. That's just a really hard thing to do in the NFL. So sometimes you have to win different ways. If you can only win one way, it's hard to be a really good team. It's just not going to happen that way every week. You can't just win one way every week.
Greg, I bet a lot of our listeners are thinking to themselves, wait a minute, I'd love to hear more about why you saw this as maybe not Mac Jones' best week, because I think the perception for most is, well, not a whole lot was asked of him because they ran the ball so well. And the two only, I think, pass plays that Niner fans remember wanting back are the interception, which was on Juwan right off of his hands,
right,
and Demarcus Robinson had the drop. So what did you see Mac not do well, I guess, in this game?
Well, like I said, I thought and this is my interpretation. Maybe Kyle Shanahan would say I'm wrong, and that could very well likely be the case. But I thought, to me, there were times I thought his eyes were not necessarily in the right place quickly enough based on the route concept versus the coverage. And I remember, I worked for years with Ron Jaworski, and he would always tell me, he said, there were 2 games a year where for whatever reason, I just didn't see it the right way. And I always remembered that statement. To me, Mac Jones, look, I doubt they went into this game. No coach goes into a game. You guys know this. You've been doing this long enough to know that. No coach goes into a game and tells the quarterback, you know what, we're not going to ask you to do very much this week. No coach goes into a game saying that. Now, obviously, they wanted to come out and run the ball, and it was very effective. But keep in mind, they only scored 2 touchdowns. And like I said, the final touchdown came with less than 3 minutes to go in the game. It was a 1-score game with 3 minutes to go. So there's no way we can look at the result, and once we have access to the result, it's easy to say a whole lot of things, but there's no way that Kyle Shanahan went into the game saying, hey, Mac, you're not going to have to do very much this week, so don't worry about it. He didn't say that.
No, but when he needed to make that play, and I want you to walk us through that 3rd and 13 that you've referenced now twice, where it's CMC who is able to break free. By my eye, Atlanta only rushed 3. They dropped 8 into coverage. What happened on that play that made McCaffrey able to get in and get that touchdown?
Yeah, well, that was basically an empty set. And what they've been doing with McCaffrey, and they've started this the last couple of years, is they line him up in kind of, I'm sure they have a name for it. I don't know what it is. But they line him up kind of offset wide but a deep slot. Okay, I'm sure you can picture it because they do this a lot. So it's essentially an empty set. And I think one of the reasons they do that with McCaffrey is because instead of just having him in the normal offset position in the backfield, when you release from there, a team can disrupt him. They can jam him with a defensive end, and what I always called the bullseye technique. So now when you put him out there, he can't be disrupted in his route. So what the Falcons did is they played man-to-man coverage just on the outside receivers and then played 5 zone defenders inside. And the play was designed for McCaffrey. He ran the seam inside of safety Bates, who ended up sort of being a deep third defender the way the Falcons played the coverage. And the secondary read was Kittle. Kittle was running a sit route right in front of Mac Jones. And Mac Jones saw the linebacker, Caden Ellis, turn his body inside. And as soon as Ellis turned his body inside, he could not play the throw to McCaffrey. And McCaffrey had the leverage on Bates, who was outside of him. So it became, in some ways, pitch and catch. Now, I think the Falcons may have only had 10 defenders on the field, but I'm not sure.
That is correct. No, that is correct, yeah. Greg. And I wonder how you saw that affecting the outcome of the play.
Yeah, I mean, they were missing a player. So they were missing a pass rusher. They weren't missing a coverage player. They were missing a pass rusher.
Let's go to the other side of the ball, because I think Niner fans were really pleasantly surprised that the pass rush seemed to return. So, A, what did you see them do there? And B, what is it going to mean to now do it without Bryce Huff?
He's definitely out, huh?
Yep, he's going to be out. It sounds like maybe at least a couple weeks, but definitely this one.
Huh. Well, it's funny because for the second consecutive game, they relied a high percentage of the time on their 4-man D-line pass rush. They did not really blitz a lot. They only rushed 5 or more on 7 of Penix's 42 dropbacks. Now, the blitz was effective when they did it. We'll see with Huff out if Robert Saleh decides that he needs to blitz more. But they played a lot more of man coverage, cover one, in this game than had been their season average through the first 6 games. Now, that may have been team specific because the Falcons, I mean, London's a nice receiver, but he's not necessarily a vertical threat. So it could have been a function of the Falcons lacking big-time wide receivers, and also Penix essentially being a pure pocket quarterback who's not necessarily going to beat you with his legs. So that could have been opponent specific, but I thought they used stunt concepts really effectively. I think they deployed a higher volume of stunt concepts than they normally do, and I thought they had really good success. The other thing that I think is really worth pointing out is I thought Bethune really showed up on film. I thought he played really, really well.
Yeah, they were aggressive, certainly. And the one thing I was looking at, Greg, and maybe you can either corroborate or deny, but it looked like when they did blitz, they were doing a lot more of the traditional zone blitz, where 2 guys would be added and 2 defensive linemen would be dropping to try to confuse the quarterback. Is that what you saw, and is that something that might work against C.J. Stroud?
Yeah, I mean, those very often when you do that, you still end up rushing 4, and those are usually called simulated pressures, because what a simulated pressure is when you still rush 4, not more, but just 4, but 1 or more of the rushers is a second or third level defender, and you have defensive linemen drop out. So, that can be confusing. You can do that sometimes, too, when you understand how a team protects, and you can get a pass rusher on maybe a linebacker on a running back, because just the way they protect, and you understand that. In fact, there was a play in this game. There might have been a penalty on it on the 49ers, but there was a pass rush by Bethune where he just blew up and ran through Bijan Robinson. And yet I believe there was an illegal contact penalty called on Lenore on that play. So it didn't necessarily count, but it was there. It's there on the film. But there's multiple ways to pressure the quarterback where you don't have to rush 5 or 6. And, I think they'll do that this week because, quite frankly, the Texans' offense right now is not very good at all, and neither is C.J. Stroud.
Yeah, and we're going to get to that for sure, especially they may be down their best receiver. Nico Collins is in the concussion protocol. One more on the Niner offense, though. There's been so much made about their interior offensive line struggling. Jake Brendel goes out. Matt Hennessy comes in, and it looked like the returns were pretty good. What did you see there?
Yeah. Well, I think it's the way they played too that was really effective because, as I said, there were a lot more double teams. And I think when you do that, you really help your O line. I think Colby went out for some snaps as well, and I forget who came in and played for him, but I know he was out for, I don't know, maybe
It was
10,
Nick
12
Zakel
snaps.
who came in, yeah.
Right. So yeah, I think it just helped. When you double team, you help your O line. So this was the best O line performance in the run game of the season. Clearly, I mean, we saw it right from the start. I mean, McCaffrey didn't break one for 30 or 40 yards, but I'm sure he had a number of 10-plus yard runs in the game, which he did. And you could see right away that he just. He was getting through the first level of the defense pretty cleanly. There was a lot of clearance on a lot of those runs.